Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our parallel session to the Commission of the Status of Women, CSW 67. We are very pleased that you can join us today. And this is a very special moment where we will be discussing and hearing from experiences of rural women from West Africa. And we have amazing women who are not used to the city comfort in the rural areas, but we have women from women from different parts of the world, mainly from Africa, but telling us their experiences and also sharing their achievements. I would like everyone to put your names and organization as well as countries of origin in the chat box, because we don't have the time to introduce everybody. But please feel free to put on your names, organization, and country in the chat box. This event is being recorded so that it can be shared for people who are not in this virtual space. So we also have captioning in English and French, and international sign are available. If participants have questions, they can be posted in the chat box. Please do not use the Q&A, rather use the chat box. That way your sessions could be highlighted. This side event is organized by Disability Rights Fund, Humanity and Inclusion Making It Work Initiative, as well as the Global Affairs of Canada. These are three amazing entities who have come together co-sponsoring this event and making disability rights and intersectionality their primary issue. I am so pleased to be here today, joined by amazing women from different parts of the world. We have Patricia from the Global Affairs Canada, who has joined us, and I would like Patricia Atkinson. Excuse me if I mispronounce your name. So Patricia is from the Global. She's also introducing herself in the chat, I can see, but she will be the first one that we will be hearing. Please remind yourself that we have captioning, both in English and French. We have international sign. We also have French and English interpretation going simultaneously. So Patricia, I'm so delighted that you could join us in this very important session. And you are the Director of Natural Resources and Governance at Global Affairs Canada, where you lead a team responsible for human rights and inclusion in the context of Canada's international assistance. I really had the privilege to work with Global Affairs Canada, and I know your commitment, GAC's commitment to intersectionality, as well as public governance and accountability, and sustainable and transparent governance of natural resources. In your perspectives, how does Global Affairs Canada ensure the intersectionality of its assistance, and how is intersectionality approached in its development cooperation programs in West Africa? Over to you, Patricia, please.
Betty, thanks so much for your introduction, and truly it's an honor to be invited to speak with this amazing group of women here today. And I'm so looking forward to learning from everyone's experiences. I'll start first for those who don't see me. I'm a white woman in my early 40s. I'm speaking to you from my home in Ottawa. I'm wearing a magenta blazer this morning because it's early in Ottawa and I needed some color to wake me up. As I mentioned, here in Ottawa, I'm speaking to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Indigenous peoples. And, I think that's a nice segue into why and how the Canadian government views intersectionality in our international assistance programming. So we do take an intersectional approach to our work, recognizing how identities can compound marginalization, and especially for women and girls with disabilities. We're guided by several policy enablers and frameworks in our work on disability inclusion, and those really help to guide our development cooperation programs in West Africa. So first, the Feminist International Assistance Policy commits Canada to providing human rights-based and inclusive international assistance, ensuring that all people can enjoy the same human rights regardless of any aspect of their identity, of course, including disability. Second, Canada in 2010 ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And as a result, we do strive to promote the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights by persons with disabilities, including and especially women and girls. And third, one of our commitments at the 2022 Global Disability Summits was to support local disability rights organizations, as well as organizations of persons with disabilities in developing countries. For the interpreters, I'm now going to change to French. Je vais passer en français. J'aimerais donner quelques exemples illustrant la manière dont nos programmes d'aide publique au développement intègrent et ciblent spécifiquement l'inclusion des personnes en situation de handicap. Alors, au Niger, le projet de développement des femmes et des adolescentes du Niger ou Devenir vise à renforcer leur autonomie dans les régions rurales de Tillabéri et Taoua grâce à un investissement de 12,2 millions de dollars sur 5 ans. Le projet promeut une approche intersectionnelle qui prend en compte les multiples facteurs d'inégalité tels que le sexe, l'âge, l'éducation, l'handicap et le statut social, et leurs effets différentiels sur les droits à la santé et l'autonomisation économique des femmes et des adolescentes. Ce projet garantit l'implication et la participation des groupes les plus vulnérables afin de renforcer leur résilience. Au Sénégal, le projet Voix et leadership des femmes, mis en œuvre par le Centre d'études et de coopération internationale, ou CECI, soutient le Comité des femmes de la Fédération des associations de personnes handicapées avec un investissement de 6,5 millions de dollars sur 5 ans. L'objectif du projet est d'attirer l'attention sur la double vulnérabilité des femmes et des filles handicapées et de plaider en faveur d'un monde plus inclusif où tous les droits sont respectés. Et cela se fait en soutenant leurs activités, en renforçant leurs capacités institutionnelles et en promouvant la création de réseaux et d'alliances. Toujours au Sénégal, notre mission, notre ambassade, travaille avec la RADO, une organisation locale de défense des droits de la personne, afin de renforcer l'intégration sociale et économique des femmes handicapées. Le projet vise à renforcer les capacités des femmes leaders des organisations de personnes handicapées afin qu'elles soient mieux équipées pour plaider et sensibiliser les décideurs sur le handicap dans les priorités et les politiques sociales. Et ce projet est financé par le Fonds canadien d'initiative locale, ou le FCIL, qui est un exemple du soutien sur le terrain que les missions ou les ambassades, les autres commissaires canadiens autour du monde peuvent apporter aux organisations partenaires. Depuis 2020, à l'échelle mondiale, ce fonds a soutenu 65 projets axés sur les personnes handicapées, dont près de la moitié ont été mis en œuvre par des organisations de défense des droits des femmes. Dans l'ensemble, le Fonds Canada a contribué à l'auteur de plus de 2 millions de dollars depuis 2020 à des projets axés sur l'inclusion des personnes en situation de handicap. Au Mali et au Niger, nos ambassades ont aussi soutenu des organisations locales de personnes handicapées dirigées par des femmes à plus petite échelle, notamment en apportant un soutien financier aux activités liées aux 16 jours d'activisme contre les violences basées sur le genre et à la Journée internationale de la femme. Pour les interprètes, je vais maintenant passer à l'anglais. I wanted to highlight these projects in particular, these last couple of projects, because smaller organizations of persons with disabilities that are working at the grassroots level are not always sure how to work with donor governments, but we know that it's often the interventions by these organizations that can have the greatest impact. So these initiatives really do recognize the need to advance gender equality, disability inclusion, and social cohesion, as well as to promote women's leadership and decision-making. As government officials and as donors, it's particularly important that we make sure we're supporting and strengthening whole of society partnerships, and that we're taking the advice of local disability rights organizations and organizations, especially that are led by persons with disabilities and women with disabilities. So I'll stop there, but again, I'm so looking forward to hearing from my fellow panelists who have lived experiences about how governments like Canada can more effectively support rural women with disabilities. Thank you. Merci encore.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was very moving and great to see that policies from Ottawa are really reaching and impacting the lives of women with disabilities in Senegal, in Mali, in Niger. That's what we always say, that let's make it work to the people at the grassroots level. And both DRF and Humanity and Inclusion have been really trying to make it work and trying to reach populations, vulnerable populations, mainly women and girls with disabilities at the grassroots. So I'm sure people will be really keen to interact more in the chat box. I can see we have more than 50 participants in the room, in the virtual venue. So please feel free to put on your questions. I would now take you all the way from Ottawa to Senegal, where I am so delighted to invite our colleague Awa Siretour. Awa from the Brigade of Conscientisation and Denunciation, Zeguni Corps. Awa is an amazing leader. She is the Deputy General Secretary of the Brigade of the Conscientisation and Denunciation of Zeguni Corps. I really apologize from Senegal, and this tells me I have to do on my French. Awa, we are really delighted that you could join us today. Can you please give us your expertise of working with and for women and girls with disabilities in rural areas, mainly in Casamance? Could you also elaborate on some of the key challenges that they are facing in your own context? Over to you, Awa, please.
Voilà, bonjour tout le monde. Je voudrais commencer d'abord par les défis, parce qu'ici au Sénégal, oui, on rencontre beaucoup de défis. Par exemple, ici, on va parler des préjugés qui fatiguent beaucoup les femmes en situation de handicap, parce que ici, le handicap est vu comme un mythe. C'est quelque chose de mystique que les femmes handicapées sont en train de vivre. C'est un obstacle qui bloque, qui freine tout sur leur passage. Et c'est de ça que je voudrais parler comme une barrière qui bloque les filles dans le monde rural, les femmes en général, classées en deuxième position après l'homme qui détient l'autorité. Les femmes doivent être soumises et répondant au rôle et attentes de la société. Elles doivent être de bonnes épouses. Les femmes rurales sont exposées à de multiples barrières qui peuvent être souvent une chose qui leur coûte cher, qui coûte même leur vie. Ici, les préjugés, les stéréotypes, c'est des croyances obscures qui freinent l'intégration des femmes et des filles handicapées en milieu rural. Ce sont des obstacles récurrents qui amènent la violence dans le milieu rural. On voit que les filles et les femmes handicapées sont cachées par leur famille et laissées en rade derrière les maisons, confinées pour toutes les tâches difficiles de la maison. Par ailleurs, elles sont considérées comme des objets de plaisir sexuel par les hommes qui viennent notamment les abuser d'elles et même pendant la journée parce qu'elles restent seules à la maison. Les filles et femmes handicapées sont tellement marginalisées qu'elles n'ont pas le droit à la parole dans les instances de décision familiale. Et tellement marginalisées que quand il y a un événement dans le village, tout le monde s'en va, les laissant seuls, à la proie de certains hommes méchants qui viennent abuser d'elles, les violenter et leur faire du mal. C'est de ces préjugés-là que je voudrais parler pour qu'au moins on ait quelque chose ensemble pour lutter et imposer leur intégration dans la société. Parce qu'elles sont des personnes à part égale de la société qui doivent répondre aux tâches de la société et équitablement être dans la société et faire quelque chose de bien. Merci. Pour nos expériences, nous, par exemple, nous avons beaucoup travaillé sur la socialisation. Avec l'UROF, l'Union régionale des personnes en situation de handicap, nous avons fait des tournées et beaucoup de sensibilisation dans les familles parce qu'on a on va avec les OSC, des associations, des organisations socio-culturelles, là où il y a des jeunes qui vont dénicher les filles handicapées et nous, on va voir leur famille et leur parler, essayer de les sensibiliser, et les familles et les communautés, pour que ces enfants ou filles handicapées soient identifiés et essayer de leur chercher des états civils parce que, étant donné qu'on ne les considère pas, donc on ne leur cherche pas des états civils. Et nous, on vient parler à la famille pour que ces enfants-là aient des pièces d'état civil, soient envoyés à l'école et que dans les décisions familiales, qu'on les intègre également dans ces prises de décision. Oui. Et nous aussi, on a vu que quand on appelle en général, dans les débats, c'est les filles, c'est les femmes, les mères des enfants qui viennent, les mères des filles handicapées qui viennent souvent. Alors, on a cherché une stratégie, chercher des hommes champions pour que ces derniers puissent parler aux autres hommes pour que tout le monde soit dans le bain et participe au changement que l'on veut dans la socialisation. Avec la brigade aussi, nous avons fait une socialisation et dans la banlieue, dans les écoles pour voir ces enfants ou filles handicapées qui n'ont pas de pièces d'état civil. Et il y a 3 ans, la brigade a fait inscrire 150 enfants à avoir des pièces d'état civil et 80%, c'est les filles. Donc, on est là, la brigade est là pour lutter pour que toutes les filles aient d'abord leur pièce d'état civil, soit aussi dans les écoles et que toutes ces mythes-là soient éradiqués de la société pour que tout le monde soit au même pied d'égalité. Et on renforce aussi le vivre ensemble et aussi impliquer toutes les femmes à la participation pleine de la société. Merci.
Thank you so much, Awa, and you have given us a very good summary of your actions as well as also your successes. Thank you so much for joining us. I am sure my virtual guests would have a lot of questions for you. Please input your questions in the chat box. We have amazing chat moderators who are collecting the questions. We will still stay in West Africa, as this is the side event for the rural women and girls with disabilities in West Africa by Disability Rights Fund, Humanity and Inclusion, and Global Affairs Canada. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Yetne Bersh, and I am a woman with a disability from East Africa, currently working for UNICEF Eastern and Southern Africa Regional Office. But I am so happy that I have this moment to share with you as a rural born and raised African woman with a disability. I will take you now to Nigeria, where we have the highest population in Africa, actually. And I know that you had your election just a couple of weeks ago in Njiru. Thank you for joining us. And Njiru Sharon is another vibrant grassroots level leader who is the founder of the Hope Inspired Foundation for Women and Youth in Nigeria, an NGO that empowers women and youth with disabilities. In particular, Njiru, I'm so delighted that you could join us today. Your organization works to empower women and girls with disabilities in rural communities to really advocate for their sexual and reproductive health rights. Can you tell us, why is there a need for this work? What barriers do rural women and girls with disabilities face when it comes to their sexual reproductive health and rights? And how are you and your organization working to overcome and eliminate those barriers? Over to you, Njiru, please.
Thank you, Etnobash. There's a dire need for more programming for women and girls with disabilities in rural communities, simply because women and girls with disabilities experience higher levels of rights violation, particularly those relating to their sexual and reproductive health. This is owing to prevalent negative sociocultural norms, perceptions about disability, ignorance of families and community members, coupled with higher levels of illiteracy, which further limits their access to their sexual and reproductive health and indeed full enjoyment of their sexual and reproductive health rights. In Nigeria, some of the barriers that women with disabilities face in rural communities include a prevalent sociocultural norms and discriminatory practices. For example, children with disabilities are locked up in homes by parents and caregivers owing to shame of having a child or a person with disability in the family. There's also the poor knowledge on the needs of persons with disabilities, particularly women and girls with disabilities, by parents and caregivers. For example, women with disabilities do not have a choice over their bodies, they do not have a choice over conception, and may not even be able to express their sexuality or sexual rights. Even worse is the fact that families may deprive women and girls with disabilities from access to sexual and reproductive health information or services. The non-functional and inaccessible health facilities in rural communities also poses a barrier. There's also little or no knowledge of health workers on delivering accessible and disability inclusive services. Additionally, absence of inclusive comprehensive education on sexuality and sexual and reproductive health stands as an additional barrier. As a woman with disability myself and an activist on sexual and reproductive health rights, I have continued to engage through awareness raising for women and girls with disabilities to understand their rights and their sexual and reproductive health, whilst also raising awareness with other stakeholders, for a recognition of the rights and the sexual and reproductive health needs of women and girls with disabilities across various project initiatives and collaborations. Since 2021, through my organization, since 2021, and through my organization, the Hope Inspired Foundation, with funding from the Disability Rights Fund, I have implemented projects to improve the sexuality education of women and girls with disabilities. And I've also, since 2022 to 2023, implemented a project to strengthen community engagement for improving sexuality education for women with disabilities in 2 target communities. As a result of this project,
The capacity of women with disabilities have been built as self-advocates. We have also advocated with duty bearers for policies and inclusive curriculums in the educational system to meet the needs of sexual reproductive health needs of women with disabilities, as well as an engagement with members of the society for a recognition of the sexual and reproductive health needs of women and girls with disabilities. I would like to conclude my response by giving 2 examples of our successes. In 2021, there was the adoption of our inclusive sexuality education tool as a reference material, which was developed, and it was adopted as a reference material by 2 line ministries of education and health. Similarly, our organization has been contacted to provide technical support through training for health workers, teachers, and counselors of the state to be able to deliver inclusive sexuality education for women and girls with disabilities. Presently, the Hope Inspire Foundation is in the process of advocating for the enactment of a disability framework, in the 2 target local governments where we work, which we believe will further improve access to sexual and reproductive health for women and girls with disabilities. Thanks to these advocacies, 3 persons with disabilities, with one of them being a woman with a disability, have been appointed as focal persons to work with duty bearers in these 2 target local governments to ensure effective disability inclusion in all of the affairs in those local communities. Most significantly is the fact that now women with disabilities are being formally recognized as leaders and are also being appointed into decision-making positions, which we believe will bring about the much needed change in ensuring access to sexual and reproductive health rights for women and girls with disabilities in Nigeria, in the rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Njiru. This was so powerful. And thank you for sharing with us some of the key highlights from your partnership with Disability Rights Fund. Indeed, systems are important to change, and people are the drivers of the system. So thank you for sharing with us about the women with disabilities being appointed as focal persons. But we know that the struggle will continue. People do consider sexual and reproductive health as optional, but my monthly period is not optional. So that is the circle. I don't think it can be optional or an afterthought right that we want to compromise. I would love to hear your opinion on this in the chat. But now I would like to take you to another beautiful country in West Africa, Benin. And I would like to introduce you to a fantastic women leader, Regina, who is representing the women leaders involved in the NGO called BBT in Benin. Regina, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule in the field. Would you please tell us about the experiences of women and girls with disabilities who are blind and partially sighted in rural Benin? By the way, Regina, I am also blind and I have lived in the rural area. So I would love to know, how does the experience of Benin-based women, in primarily blind women, how do they face life? What are their challenges and opportunities? Over to you, Regina, please.
Merci beaucoup. Les femmes handicapées visuelles dans les zones rurales au Bénin sont confrontées aux barrières à la participation sociale. Et ces barrières sont souvent remarquées au niveau de la participation à la vie de la famille et à la vie de la communauté. Et au niveau de la participation à la vie de la famille, les femmes handicapées visuelles sont empêchées de participer aux tâches domestiques. Or, cette participation leur permettrait d'acquérir l'estime d'elles-mêmes, d'être autonomes, indépendantes d'être valorisées et de trouver leur place. La première raison, la femme handicapée visuelle est considérée comme une personne incapable, comme un sujet de honte et de malédiction. La deuxième raison est l'absence de transmission des compétences de la vie quotidienne chez ces femmes handicapées visuelles. Les parents de ces dernières ne se rendent pas compte que ce sont les comportements, leur comportement, en particulier la surprotection, qui augmente la vulnérabilité chez ces dernières. Et il faut aussi dire que ces parents ne connaissent pas les droits de ces femmes handicapées-là. Au niveau de la vie communautaire, ces femmes handicapées visuelles ont de difficultés à intégrer les groupements villageois. Par exemple, les associations des femmes ou de jeunes, les groupements religieux ou folkloriques. Ces femmes sont privées de toutes les occasions qui leur permettraient de renforcer la confiance en elles-mêmes et leur intégration. Elles n'ont aucune occasion de se découvrir elles-mêmes, d'occuper les rôles sociaux, d'interagir avec leur père et de se sentir soutenues. Et quand nous allons au niveau de, toujours dans la société, bon, faut dire, ces barrières sont dues au manque d'éducation et le manque de confiance en soi. Il y a aussi le manque de dispositifs d'aide à la mobilité et le manque de guides pour toujours les femmes handicapées visuelles. Et pour aider ces femmes à sortir de ces situations, l'ONG Batimé, qui est une ONG béninoise, a mis en place un projet Femmes Leader, qui est nommé Femmes Leader. Cette ONG est au service des personnes handicapées visuelles. Et ce projet consiste à choisir 12 femmes de l'ONG pour être des leaders et aller vers leur père. Et ce leadership est basé sur la bonne acceptation de leur handicap et sur leur potentiel. Et dans cette optique, l'ONG forme et suit ces femmes, ces 12 femmes choisies de façon continue. Elle amène ces femmes leaders à mener des missions de sensibilisation et ceci a permis d'accompagner 300 femmes de 2018 à 2022. Et les thématiques souvent abordées auprès de ces femmes handicapées est le droit des femmes handicapées, les lois qui les protègent, la prévention des violences basées sur le genre, l'autonomie financière, c'est-à-dire la gestion des activités génératrices de revenus. Je vais parler aussi des succès. Avant ça, disons que cette expérience a permis d'élaborer un document d'accompagnement psychosocial personnalisé. Et pour donner 2 exemples particuliers de nos réussites, nous avons rencontré lors d'une causerie dans les zones rurales une fillette que nous appellerons Fatih. Et nous nous sommes rendus compte de l'intelligence de cette fille. Cette fille n'était pas scolarisée jusqu'à l'âge de 7 ans parce que ses parents doutaient de l'importance de l'éducation chez une fille ou une femme handicapée visuelle. Et les femmes leaders ont ensuite fait un travail d'information et de sensibilisation auprès des parents qui ont finalement inscrit cette fille à l'école. Aujourd'hui, cette fille est en classe de CE1 et évolue très bien. Et le deuxième exemple, il y a eu la création des coopératives des femmes handicapées visuelles. Et pour le nombre, nous avons pu toucher 45 femmes qui ont pu gérer en commun des activités génératrices de revenus, ce qui a permis à ces femmes de gagner la considération des proches, d'être en quelque sorte autonomes financièrement, c'est-à-dire ne plus solliciter d'aide financière pour les dépenses élémentaires. Et merci beaucoup. C'est en quelque sorte nos expériences avec ces femmes.
Huge thanks to Regina. That was very inspiring. And the example about the girl in education perfectly fits with the next speaker. I'm going to invite you, Jandira Montiero, who is the regional specialist for inclusive education at Humanity and Inclusion in West Africa. Jandira, welcome again, and thank you for joining us today on this very important topic of rural women and girls with disabilities in West Africa. And you have heard literally all the panelists, most of them mentioning about the importance of education. With your extensive experience in different countries of the sub-region, would you share with us some insights on how girls with disabilities in rural areas are particularly disadvantaged in regards to education, as well as key actions that Humanity and Inclusion is implementing in that field? Over to you, Jandira.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, we cannot discuss the barriers the rural women and girls with disability in the West Africa face without acting on what keeps them out of schools. The problem of rural girls' education and in particular girls with disability is really complex, which is why an analysis of the factors at stake is necessary for an in-depth diagnosis of their situations. Here, I would like to point out three main barriers. First of all, the gender roles assigned to little girls, in particularly in remote rural areas. The reliance on girls with disability labors within the family or community prevent them to enroll their children in school. Also, the early pregnancy or marriage of rural women and girls with disability is a key obstacle. Second, I will say that girls with disability face tremendous challenges to manage their menstrual hygienically and with some dignity, leading them to high dropout rates. A 2019 systematically review of menstrual hygiene management requirements, its barriers and strategies for girls and women with disability undertaken by UNICEF found that the menstruation challenges were a source of shame for girls and women with disabilities. Apart from the social stigma around menstruation, there is also a lack of accessibility of school infrastructure including sanitation facilities. Girls and women with different types of disability may have different menstruating needs. In our experience during the past 5 years in a rural region of Guinea-Bissau, in Oyo, those with physical impairments, 15%, around 50% of 350 followed girls with disabilities in 22 schools, in their upper body and arms may have difficulties placing placing their sanitary protection materials in the correct position and even washing themselves, their clothes and the menstrual materials. Those with vision impairments, blind or low vision, which represent 40%, may have challenge knowing if they have full cleaned themselves. They cannot see if they are really clean or not. And those with intellectual and some development impairments have fully, which represent 5%, may need accessible and easy to read materials, which is tailored to support them to communicate about their pain as well as their needs and to learn about their menstrual health and hygiene. At Humanity Inclusion, we have long been involved in promoting education for girls and boys with disabilities. For instance, in rural regions of Guinea-Bissau, we have worked to create school environments where girls with disabilities are able to learn, participate, and to access water and sanitation at school hygienically and with dignity. The school infrastructure designs have been made accessible for girls with disabilities through, for instance, the inclusive hygienic clubs in school. The objectives of school hygienic clubs include mostly educate students on issues related to wash in school and communities and to promote the maintenance and cleaning of sanitation, water points, classroom and school grounds, as well as to promote good hand washing practice at school and to raise some awareness through activities in the school hygiene club. Regarding success during the COVID-19 pandemic, the clubs we create, we support to be created, they have focused mainly on the prevention of COVID transmission as well as reducing the stigma towards people who have had COVID. The clubs play an important role in coordinating, facilitating, and encouraging WASH in school and communities. And secondly, the school hygienic clubs have promoted inclusion and are recognized as a successful mechanism to welcome girls with disabilities to school and to create supportive environments for them, including girls with different types of disabilities. In the assessment teams dedicated to water, sanitation, and hygiene at school, utilize their experience, perspective, and capacity to strengthen the accessibility and inclusion of WASH programs and infrastructure. Given the negative social norms and stigma that girls with disability face, social behavior change and campaigns to change attitudes are also required to ensure that girls with disabilities can be enrolled and attend school on a weekly basis as their peers without disabilities. And to conclude, I would like to leave some few recommendations. First, I would recommend collaboration in a systematical way with organization of persons with disabilities to assess water, sanitation, and hygiene programs, and for the government to support disability and gender inclusive water, sanitation, and hygiene in school standard. This is really critical in order to institutionalize at the national level the inclusion of girls and boys with disabilities. But equally as important is the dissemination, the rollout and training of the standards to ensure that teachers and principals are aware of the standards and able to assess whether their school wash facilities are child-friendly and gender-sensitive and disability accessible. That would allow removing one of the barriers preventing girls and boys with disability to attend school. Thank you.
Thank you, Jandira. Thank you so much. That was very enlightening. Thank you for the set of great examples that you have already shared with us. This takes us into the final presentation from our panelists. We started with a very good highlight and inspiration from Patricia from Global Affairs Canada. And we were lucky to hear from fellow rural women in Senegal, Benin and Nigeria, and concluded with a regional analysis from a colleague from Humanity and Inclusion. This is a very important topic, and this is the most important moment of the day where we would like to pause to hearing from you. I would like to alert participants that since you are muted, questions, reflections, and experiences would be highly welcome through the chat box. So I would now request my colleagues, Sophie and Vicky, to take over in moderating the discussion session, which we definitely would love to hear from each of you. I can see we are more than 70 in the room. You have heard, now it's your time to speak. Over to you, Sophie.
Merci, thank you so much, Yetnebesh. A first question that was displayed in the chat, and yeah, please write your questions in the chat so we can direct them to our panelists. So a first question is, I think, directed to Awa. Domoina is asking you and thanking you for your speech and asking you that as we are discussing situations in the rural areas, she would like to hear about the influence of the customary justice system for women with disabilities who are facing violence. Question to you, Awa. Thank you.
Voilà. Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais parler des lois coutumières, de l'accès à la justice des femmes handicapées dans le milieu rural. Parce que dans le milieu rural, c'est la justice coutumière qui domine. Et dans ça, il y a un problème, beaucoup de stigmatisation et beaucoup de combines en faveur des hommes qui fait que la femme, en général, a des problèmes à accéder à la justice. En plus, la fille ou la femme handicapée a plus de problèmes. Et je veux dire, en zone rurale, il y a un problème d'accès à la justice, notamment pour le cas de la violence. La justice coutumière est très dominante et repose sur la médiation en faveur de l'homme, qui oblige les filles et les femmes handicapées à accepter des arrangements qui sont toujours en faveur des hommes, et arrangements entre familles qui sont toujours aussi en faveur des hommes. Et elles sont obligées d'accepter malgré elles, même si leurs droits sont piétinés. On est obligé d'accepter parce que, comme je vous ai dit à l'avance, la fille ou la femme handicapée n'est pas bien considérée. Ces stéréotypes l'amènent à être toujours en arrière, en deuxième plan après l'homme. Et quand il y a justice qui favorise l'homme, la femme handicapée est défavorisée et elle est obligée d'accepter parce que ces violences-là, on les connaît, elles sont toujours basées sur le genre. La fille ou la femme est toujours victime et c'est comme ça. On est obligé d'accepter.
Merci, Awa. Sorry, for the sake of time, I have to shorten the answer. Thank you so much for your answer. I think we had another question that I would very much see directed to our moderator, to Yeti herself. We do have Elisam asking, how do you consider the challenges of girls and women with intellectual disabilities in the rural areas and in the developing countries like Rwanda? So I'm not sure we are specialists here of Rwanda, but I'm sure Yeti, you would like to answer about the challenges of girls and women with intellectual disabilities?
Thank you, Sophie. I am sure this is a very important question. Regardless of the place in Rwanda, women and girls with intellectual disabilities face more challenge. We know that not all women and girls with disabilities are equally vulnerable. But so when they have intellectual disabilities, where people have less understanding and also misinformation about their type of disability and about the type of support that they would require, that really exacerbates the exclusion they face. But with the Making It Work project, I do remember the Making It Work had a documentation from Kenya on the experience of women and girls with disabilities, which is more or less the same situation with Rwanda. And I should say that we have really seen the degree of vulnerability is very, very high because of their type of disability and because of their life in rural area. They are never heard, they're not represented in the court. Their words of witnessing or even being a plaintiff in the court are devalued, the legal capacity issue. So I think as the whole, the panel recognizes that women and girls with intellectual disabilities are among the groups which deserve a due attention, because we have spoken less, we have written less, and the community knows less about them, but they are more vulnerable. I should stop here and maybe we should allow other questions, Sophie. Sophie?
Yeah, oops, sorry, I was, struggle with many screens, and thank you so much, Yeti. And yes, it's true that within the Making It Work project, we did document a good practice done by COVO, Coalition on Violence Against Women, Kenya, together with KAI, the Kenya Association for the Intellectually Handicapped. And those are, sometimes also a bit of invisible disabilities that are left behind. We do have a question from Faith to the panelists, and maybe we will give the floor to Ejiro to start answering to that question. So Faith is thanking you all for the very powerful presentations. And she's asking if we could learn more from the panelists on about how technical assistance has influenced your work. So I understand, maybe Faith can correct me if she is still there with us. Do you mean technical assistance received from external partners such as DRF for making it work? Is it what you mean, dear Faith? And I'd like to give the floor to Ejiro.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophie. So, I mean, I think that one of the key things with technical assistance is it actually helps, depends on the kind of technical assistance that you receive. I will give an example from our context. As an OPD in Nigeria, sometimes you find that you may not necessarily have all of the capacity you need to be able to effectively implement your project. And getting those kind of technical support actually gives you, strengthens your capacity as an organization to implement. We work with women and girls in rural communities, and sometimes there's a need for, proper knowledge on safeguarding principles and guidelines, which would obviously help you to protect your beneficiaries and be able to deliver effectively. I think in 2021, that was one of the technical support that we're able to get through our OPD strengthening from the grant we received from DRF. So that's just one of the ways. And, in other areas of technical support, like resource mobilization may also involve, sourcing funding, building your capacity as an organization to be able to, adequately position, yourself and the work that you're doing to attract support, either in terms of funding or in terms of, collaboration with other organizations. So having all of this technical support not only builds the capacity, but also helps to enhance the work that you're doing. So I think that from my context, and my organization, I would say that receiving technical support has actually helped us a whole lot in positioning our organization, as well as expanding, the scope of our work and the reach to women and girls with disabilities in rural communities and also beyond the rural communities as well. So I hope that answers the question.
I certainly think so. Thank you, Ejiro. And is Regina with us still? Regina in Benin, Bartime NGO. If Regina and yeah, I see Regina. Hi, my dear. So same question to you. How has any technical assistance provided to you, to the NGO Bartime, either by other partners or even by the government, being helping or influencing your work? If you feel like answering.
Concernant le soutien technique, au Bénin, je dirais que c'est pas du tout facile de ce côté parce que c'est une ONG que l'État reconnaît très bien, mais n'investit pas en tant que tel dedans. Donc, il faut solliciter l'aide des partenaires. Ce qui a fait qu'on n'a pas pu atteindre tous les départements. On a ciblé quelques départements pour le travail. Et je dirais que c'est grâce à Making It Work que nous avons pu aborder de nouvelles zones. Et concernant la mobilisation de ce côté, c'est un peu difficile. Et la tâche n'est pas du tout facile de ce côté. Et on se cherche encore et on espère le meilleur. Merci.
Thank you so much, Regina. And we also hope Sorry, yeah, we also hope for the best for Bartime and all your wonderful activities that you are doing there in Benin, in particular as a woman leader yourself. And we can see that today, definitely. We will have one last question in this Q&A, and I know there are many, many other questions in the chat. We would like to ask a question to Patricia. Yeah, maybe we'll have two. We'll ask Patricia and probably then Jandira to be short in their answers if possible. So question for you, Patricia, for the Canadian government, what would be some of the challenges with ensuring women and girls with disabilities are prioritized in Canadian programming? Might not be easy to answer with a short answer, but over to you, Patricia.
Merci, Sophie. I'll do my best. I think it's an incredibly important question. And it's definitely an area where we do see some challenges. So I think what tends to happen and what we need to be careful to avoid is applying a one-size-fits-all approach in our disability programming. There's a tendency to ungender women and girls with disabilities and to treat the needs of persons with disabilities as a homogeneous block. And as we've heard today, that's simply not the case. And so we do need to be more sensitive to their specific needs and situations. So I think there is a lot of work to be done there. I will be honest that at this point, the proportion of our disability programming overall, which specifically targets women and girls with disabilities, remains comparatively low. And so that's an area that I do want to see us work on in the coming years to really increase that targeted focus and make sure that we are addressing the intersectional identities and marginalizations of women and girls with disabilities. So yeah, thank you for flagging that.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. We will have one last question for Jandira. And sorry, I'm going to be a bit tricky because I'm sort of going to ask two questions in one, but Jandira, I know you will deal with this perfectly. So, because there was a question on how do we support women and girls in rural areas, especially on education, but I think on this, you already touched on that in your intervention. So, but if you want to add something on that aspect, and also another question from Ndai Sokna was, and she's congratulating all those women leaders with disabilities. Her question was to know how to scale and to scale up local leaders as well, for a better respect of the human rights of women and girls with disabilities who live in the rural areas. So I'm sure, Jandira, you could tell us something about the way you've been working with those local leaders throughout those years. Thank you. Over to you.
Yes, it's really, thank you, Sophie, for the question. And it's really, really important to work with the local leaders as far as concern the education of girls with disabilities in the rural areas. We work with them in a very transversal perspective, because we don't work only with focus with woman groups, but we try to reach all community groups in our area of intervention. I'm talking about as well the youth group. We used to work in a very in an inclusive perspective of governments. So it's really important to sensitize them in order to respect the girls with disabilities and to work as well with the parents. If there is no collaboration, a systematic collaboration with the organization of persons with disabilities, it's really impossible to touch families and to mainstream the importance of education of girls with disabilities. As well, with the government, it's really critical to show them that disability and gender inclusive water, sanitation, and hygiene in school standards are really critical, because if they don't institutionalize them at the national level, the inclusion of girls with disability will be not possible. But it's important as well, the dissemination and the training of the teachers and principals to be aware of the standards and all the requirements to welcome girls in the school environment. Thank you.
Et merci beaucoup Jean-Dira. And I will, speak in English to his communication. I think that's going to be the end of this Q&A session. So I saw our raising the hand. You might keep your remarks for the final remarks. I will hand over to Yeti that will continue moderating this panel for this last piece. And thank you all, because I'm going to just disappear and continue listening with great interest. Yeti, over to you, dear Captain.
Merci, Sophie. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for forwarding questions, which really inspired a lot of discussion among these great panelists. Now we are in the concluding part of this event, and I will have a very brief moment of reflection for my fellow panelists. And I would like to start with Patricia from the Global Affairs Canada, who is one of the 3 co-sponsors of this event. Patricia, hearing all these reflections and experiences from these rural women and girls with disabilities in West Africa, how do you think it can impact the programming in Canada, and what is your reflection in particular towards its impact towards enriching the intersectionality and the reach towards diverse groups? As you said, one size does not fit all. How can these reflections enrich the policies and programs with Global Affairs Canada? Over to you.
Thanks so much, Yeti. And thank you so much to all of the panelists who shared all of their reflections and experiences, because this has been honestly a fantastic investment of time for me to hear all of your perspectives and the ways that which we can try to make Canadian programming more responsive to the needs and the situations of women and girls with disabilities. I heard a lot this morning on, the multifaceted and complicated nature of marginalization and exclusion of rural women and girls with disabilities, from the sexual and reproductive health and rights, menstrual hygiene, access to education, access to justice, their roles in their family and their community, and being victims of violence and exploitation. So, that's really important to hear and to take on board, and to remind us why we work in this sphere. But what I also heard was really the power of the women leaders who are leading these organizations of persons with disabilities, who are pushing forward this work and really helping the women and girls who find themselves in challenging situations. That power is really reflected when women are provided with the tools and the support to advocate for themselves and to inform decisions and policies and programming. So for me, what I really took from this discussion was the incredible importance of continuing to work with and empower and include organizations of persons with disabilities, and particularly those that are led by women, in order to really make sure that intersectionality is reflected in not only the work that we do, but how we do that work. And that's how that becomes truly inclusive of all of the aspects of identity. So sincerely, thank you so much for sharing all of those experiences and reflections. Very impactful and really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Patricia. We really appreciate your time and your genuine commitment for this agenda and that of your government, the government of Canada. We definitely look forward to take this also to the grassroots level and ensure that our reflections and voices are heard. I would like now to request my other fellow panelists to conclude. I would like each one of you to give at least one key recommendation which you would like to give for partners, including governments, to really improve the lives of women and girls with disabilities to overcome the barriers that they face in their daily life. We start from Senegal. Awa, what is your one key recommendation, one or two key recommendation you want to give as a result of this discussion today? Over to you, Awa.
Moi, pour mes recommandations, je demande à tous les États de faire l'effort d'accompagner les groupes de personnes handicapées et notamment des organisations de femmes handicapées à identifier leurs multiples barrières ou leurs multiples problèmes ou obstacles pour qu'elles apportent des solutions positives à leur prise en charge en renforçant les cadres législatifs. Et là, je pense à la ratification par les pays du protocole à la Charte africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples relatifs aux droits des personnes handicapées qui constitue une avancée majeure en matière de dignité et de droits pour toutes les personnes handicapées en Afrique et particulièrement les femmes et filles en énonçant les 12 positions propres aux femmes handicapées. Et aux donateurs aussi, je peux lancer quelques mots parce que aux donateurs que je salue au passage, parce que comme Achi qui nous a toujours épaulés, qui nous a toujours accompagnés, eux aussi devaient mettre toutes les femmes qu'ils accompagnent au cœur des différents projets qu'ils nous apportent, au cœur des projets d'accompagnement, les capacités à la lutte pour une pleine intégration de leurs droits et devenir elles-mêmes les agentes de leur propre changement. Parce que quand elles sont bien formées, avec les multiples formations, quand elles sont bien capacitées, elles pourront être dans la bataille pour mener à bien le changement équitable qu'on rencontre. Et je salue aussi au passage les leaders féministes qui sont là, parce qu'on voit maintenant ici chez nous que beaucoup de femmes leaders appellent les femmes handicapées leaders à intégrer leur groupe et à bien travailler pour une bonne intégration des femmes. Merci. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Awa, and it's great that you are leaving us with hope and with a positive future. So thank you. I would like now to give the floor for Njiru from Nigeria to give your key recommendations in 1 minute, please. Thank you. Over to you, Njiru.
Thank you so much. First, I would say what we need is to improve the capacity of the local government officials on the various provisions of the framework and through information and awareness raising campaigns, about the framework, influence a speedy enactment and implementation of the disability framework in the local governments in Lagos State and indeed across the 774 local governments in Nigeria. This, I believe, will improve access to sexual and reproductive health for women and girls with disabilities in rural communities, as well as improve the commitments for an effective implementation of the National Disability Act, which in fact, this year it's in its 3rd year of being enacted. I think also the donor partners, can help to strengthen organizations of persons with disabilities, OPDs, particularly women-led OPDs, for them to be able to implement more targeted sexual reproductive health interventions in the rural communities by financially supporting and providing technical support to them, and also improving the capacity of women with disabilities, to collaborate with mainstream women's movements. And most importantly, I would say, is women with disabilities must be welcomed into all feminist spaces in order to ensure that no woman is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Njiru, and you've brought a very important point of embracing equity and intersectionality. I'm pretty sure that panelists, as well as also participants of this panel, would take notes of the need for the technical assistance, for the collaboration needed. Now we will go to Benin and hear from Regina in terms of her key messages on the rural women and girls with disabilities. I'm still seeing amazing discussions going on in the chat box. Please continue, because we're closing only this session, not the discussion. So please continue interacting. Over to you, Regina, on your final message.
Merci beaucoup. Concernant mes recommandations, je prends pas ce canal pour demander au gouvernement béninois que les politiques ciblant les personnes handicapées soient conçues et programmées avec l'implication de ces derniers. Par exemple, si nous prenons les commissions qui ont été mises en place pour travailler sur les décrets d'application de la loi 2017 portant protection et promotion des droits des personnes handicapées en République du Bénin, on doit s'assurer que ces femmes handicapées en milieu urbain comme en milieu rural soient écoutées et impliquées dans ces commissions. Et aux donateurs, nous demandons de rendre accessible aux femmes handicapées des financements flexibles, c'est-à-dire sans niveau de structuration élevé, ou bien, si ce ne serait pas de façon individuelle pour ces femmes handicapées, qu'on rende accessible ces fonds aux organisations qui travaillent avec ces derniers. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Regina. This is quite impressive, and it's really encouraging always to hear from the grassroots and ensuring that women of all diversities, from the rural and from the urban area with disabilities, are really in the forefront, making sure that movements are inclusive of everybody. I can see also resources being shared in the chat box. I can see the gender guideline of DRF. So please make sure that you don't go empty-handed. Take a look at the different resources that the 3 co-sponsors have developed, Making It Work, HI, Global Affairs Canada, and Disability Rights Fund. The last words will now go to our colleague, Jandira from HI. And please, Jandira, give us your final concluding remarks.
Thank you. Okay, my key recommendation will be the collaboration with the women and girls with disability and the organization of women with disabilities through the cycle of menstrual health hygienically program will help, this collaboration will help to identify especially the needs of women and girls with disability and design or adapt the menstrual health hygienically programs to be more inclusive. as well to, I will say, to build the capacity of health, education professionals to communicate with girls and women with disability on menstrual health hygienically by including disability programs or disability models in the school and the menstrual health hygienically trainings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chandra. May I kindly request all the participants to give a big applause for our amazing panelists and the invisible success factors, our French English interpreters, our international sign interpreters, and our captioners. Without your support, we would have never been able to lead such a very vibrant, unique, and diverse session. So I would like to leave you with some key messages. I know Global Affairs Canada and Disability Rights Fund, as well as Humanity and Inclusion, will take this agenda forward. I think it's an important time that we put rural women and girls with disabilities at the epicenter, as the climate change really heats the rural people. We see the drought in different parts, as well as the cyclone, the flooding, the hurricane. So it's very timely and quite important that we come together to really bring and empower rural women and girls with disabilities. Capacity development was raised as key recommendation from so many people. I think we really need to invest in grassroots level organizations of persons with disabilities. We matter when we are together. So it's critically important that we build on coalitions, we join hands and really empower our women and girls with disabilities organization to speak up, to participate, but also to take leadership. How can we really become gender transformative instead of being gender responsive in our disability inclusion programs? We have a huge task to lead. The CSW will continue, but now we're coming to the end of this event, and I would like to thank each one of you who took the time to really listen to this event, put forward questions, as well as share your reflections. We are not closing the discussion because we're just starting this discussion very, very late. And we have commitments that we have to meet in 2030. I have also seen a great invitation for all of you to come to the Women Deliver Agenda next door in Rwanda, and we continue this conversation whenever we can with whosoever you can influence. This is the last of our side event, and I would like to thank again our great panelists, Awa, Njiru, Regina, Chandra, and Patricia, as well as the co-sponsors Disability Rights Fund, Making It Work, Humanity and Inclusion, as well as Global Affairs Canada. Thank you and enjoy your time. Continue the discussion. Let's push for more action. Have a good time.